I had ESPN on a lot today, and they were talking about a lot of different things, obviously with head coaches in the NFL, that carousel that's going on. But the conversation bled into college football a little bit today on, I believe it was on First Take, right? And Stephen A. Smith, Dan Orlovsky, those guys were talking about it. And they had a very brief discussion about the face of college football, about how Nick Saban was the face of college football. And they were arguing that Kirby Smart, new face of college football. So is Kirby Smart the face of college football? What do you think of? Who do you think of when you think of college football, right? You think of the Heisman Trophy. You think of national championships. You think of the bowl games. Nick Saban was obviously one of the first names that would pop up with that. We're talking about, arguably the greatest college football. Or I'm arguing it, at least. If you're arguing something else, then I'm arguing with you that Nick Saban is the best in college football history, right? And so, in turn, he was the face of it. And I think that you get superstars. They come into college football for a couple of years, right? A lot of people, they have one real pop year in college football. But some, they pop for a couple of years, and then they're kind of the face of college football. I think there's an argument that Caleb Williams was obviously one of the faces of college football the last couple of seasons. When you talk about players that win a Heisman freshman or sophomore year, and you have seasons after that, those are faces, right? Or fresh young players that are superstars, already popular players, right? Trevor Lawrence was a face of college football. Deshaun Watson was a face of college football. Lamar Jackson was a face of college football. Johnny Manziel was. All right, if you want to talk about it from a player perspective, there are all sorts of them. Stetson Bennett, I don't think quite reached that status at his time at Georgia, although he was one of the biggest stories of the last few years of college football. One of the biggest stories in college football ever. The coaches are also the faces, right? And they're the ones that are around for longer because you could, it's a little bit different now. You've got guys requesting year 9 of eligibility and things like that. Obviously, a lot of players who played, who were around during the COVID year, they got extra eligibility. So, but for the most part, 3 or 4 or 5 years, right, that the players get their shot. And so coaches can last a lot longer. Obviously, Kirby Smart's been at Georgia for longer than that. And I think that he's kind of, if it's going to be a coach, it's him, right? Because now, as Saban's gone, everyone points towards Kirby Smart as, hey, man, you're the best in the sport now. And I agree. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post here, talking about the face of college football. And I believe that there is a legitimate argument for it to be Kirby Smart now, right? Who do you think about? I mean, who pops in your head when you think about college football? For me, I immediately think of the greats. Right, I think of incredible seasons. I think of Joe Burrow's season when I think about college football. I think about Cam Newton's season when I think about college football. You might think about different things. Those aren't the only two things I think about. Those are just two of the things that popped in my head as I'm trying to do this exercise in real time. It was Nick Saban for a long time. He was the face. And there are some really good coaches out there. There's some really good coaches in the SEC. I think that Steve Sarkisian is building something at Texas that could last a long time. But I just don't think there's anyone better than Kirby right now. There's just nobody better than Kirby right now with Saban being out of the picture. If you wanted to make an argument for Jim Harbaugh on the rise, well, guess what? He ain't to deal with the Chargers on Thursday. I'm recording this, by the way. This is around 7 p.m. on Thursday evening, just to give you an idea of where my head's at in case I say something that is just not true anymore. But Harbaugh, he's off to the NFL, right? So a guy that was on the rise in the sport in college football, which he was, you can't make the argument for him. I don't think it's Ryan Day. You got to win natties. You got to win natties to do that. And there aren't a lot of coaches in college football that have done that, right? Obviously, Dabo has a couple. Kirby, he's got a couple. Other than those guys, Ed Orgeron, Nick Saban, those are the only people that have won national championships since 2015. I didn't even think about it that way. Wow, this is new information to me. Harbaugh, Kirby, Saban, Orgeron. So this is 19. Saban. Or Dabo, Saban, right? Whatever order that was. Yeah, so it's been like 9 years since it wasn't one of those names that's won a national championship, which adds to my point here that, yeah, you can make the legitimate argument that Kirby Smart is the new face of college football. College football is not going to lose popularity. It's the younger audience is going to stick with it. They're not just going to ditch college football because at the end of the day, younger people don't have the same opinions as older people. And I share both sides. I share pieces from both, right? People that are just can't handle what's going on in college football right now, don't like it. I don't like everything either. Look, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say I like the fact that I'll give you a Georgia example. I like the fact that Eddie Mitchell left for Texas, and that maybe a little bit of that was Texas could offer him better money, right, for his family. Speculation, I don't know that for a fact, right? That was speculation there. But the point was to be hypothetical with that. Caleb Downs, right? Obviously, Ohio State was willing to pay him a lot of money. I don't love the way that you can just jump ship and do things of that nature. So obviously, I don't love all the changes, but the sport's not going to just cease in popularity, right? The product, I think, is still going to be a pretty good product. If you were an unbiased fan, right? Obviously, most of the people watching this are Georgia fans. I ask you this: if you were an unbiased fan, did you enjoy this last college football season? It was fun. There was a lot of fun. Remember September when we were all watching Colorado? Whether you liked it or not, it was fun. Whether you liked it or not, the SEC Championship was a fun game. Whether you liked it or not, the playoffs, right? Washington, Texas, that was fun. Alabama, Michigan, that was fun. So I don't think the sport is just going to deteriorate from a quality standpoint, and which means I don't think the viewership's going to go down. So you still can have faces of the sport because it's still going to be popular. It's still the breeding ground for the NFL, which is obviously the biggest driver in all of this, right, is the National Football League, it being the end-all, be-all goal for most of these players and some of these coaches. So you can still have faces. That was my second piece of this. Kirby, in 7 years, whatever, Rose Bowl, Peach Bowl, Sugar Bowl, Natty, Orange Bowl. Am I wrong? Did I double count one of those? He's only got one sugar. Take one of the sugars away. That's where I was wrong. Peach, Sugar Rose, Orange, Natty. Those games, those significant trophies, plus 2 SEC championships, 10 significant trophies since Kirby Smart has been the head coach at Georgia. That's in fewer than 10 years. So in fewer than 10 years, he's got 10 significant trophies that matter. Yes, he is the new face of college football. Who else could it be? Well, you get a superstar coming into the sport and playing well for 2 or 3 years. They'll obviously be a current face. But as a long-term one, you do point to Kirby Smart, because what was Nick Saban doing? He was rattling off national championships and bowl games and NFL players and number 1 recruiting classes. Nobody else is doing that but Kirby. No one else has done that but Kirby. Dabo dipped in the pool a little bit. He dipped in the pool a little bit, and things aren't going as well. Things could not go as well for Georgia in a few years. I don't know what the future holds. We weren't 100% sure that Georgia was going to win those national championships. Did you really think that was going to happen back in 2020? Did you think, Georgia's going to go back-to-back after this, after what we're watching, after the shit show that was Jamie Newman, JT Daniels, DeJuan Mathis, Stetson, all of that? We weren't sitting there thinking Georgia was going to win 2 national championships, so anything can really happen in that regard. But nobody's doing it at the level that Kirby's doing it. So you do look at him as the face, especially if Georgia were to win this past SEC championship against Alabama, it obviously would have, maybe been a little bit easier to say this. You could have said the shifting of the dynasties was a little bit more obvious, and it's a little bit less obvious because of that. But now with Saban retiring, you go back to that notion that Georgia is the number 1 program in college football, right? Some people just couldn't come to terms with that, with Saban being in office, right? Let's put it that way. With Saban being in office, he's not, right? And so if there's anyone that's going to be the face as a coach, I would point towards Kirby. It's not Lincoln Riley. It's not Dabo anymore. It's not Dan Lanning. It's not these guys. If it is somebody that's a coach, it's Kirby. And if it's a player, I don't know if we have that quite yet, right? For the next couple of years, I think I think that the couple guys that we've had from the last couple of years are gone in that regard. So who will it be? We're going to find out. Thank you for watching. Link is down below for the newsletter.